Welcome. Today we're gonna throw big things. I'm at a workshop with Ove and Gitte Würtz, some of the best, most experienced potters you can find in Denmark. And among other things, they're known to do really big and very beautiful pots. So I want to become better at that. Today, I'm gonna try and become better at throwing big. As you know, I do like throwing big things, and I do a lot of sectional throwing, and I do really big chunks of clay. I think the biggest one I did ever was 20 kilo. But I have a problem with pulling up enough clay. I mean, when I went from 5 to 10 kilo, it got a little bit taller, but not that much taller. Then with 20 kilo, it was very little taller. So somehow I'm not moving all that clay up in height. I want to be better at that. I'm gonna start out with about 5 kilo clay. For my experiments here, trying to throw bigger, it's not that important how much clay I'm actually working on. Wedging a lot of clay can be a challenge. And 5 kilo is sort of a lot of clay when it comes to wedging. So I always start out by just slamming it to soften it up a bit before I move on with a more regular wedging. I always start out with slap centering my clay. Especially with bigger chunks of clay, it makes sense to try and make it as centered as possible before you actually start spinning the wheel and doing the real centering. Coning up and pushing down the clay helps me with the centering, but it also sort of helps aligning the particles in the clay, and all in all, it just makes it easier to throw. In my first pull, I'm primarily trying to move the clay from the bottom up the sides. I'm not trying to gain so much height. I'm trying to maintain an equal wall thickness all the way up through the pot. And that requires me to push quite a lot more at the bottom and then slowly releasing when I move up. If I keep the same pressure, it's going to be wobbly. Between each of my pulls, I usually recenter a little bit and color in the top of the pot. It just wants to move out and I want to keep it narrow. After I've done that, the thickness of the wall is of course going a little bit up, so I can pull out a little more height of that top part. So this is 5 kilos of clay, and now I reached like the height that I normally get out of clay like this, but I know it's possible to get it even higher. So this is my first test. I'm gonna do several tests with 5 kilo of clay. I also throw 10, 15, even 20 kilos of clay, but the principle is the same. So if you want to practice to get more height out of your clay, there's no reason to initiate the practice with much more than that. Yeah. 5 kilos is fine. And look, Now I'm doing what I'm not supposed to do. Some people call it the lazy elbow. You see, I'm leaning my lower arm against the top of the pot, and that puts stress on it, and it also makes it more likely to wobble. And it's a very bad habit. But I find it very difficult to focus on my breathing, on my pulling, and my arm. That's 3 things, and I'm not a good multitasker. But you have to pay attention to this. So I'm gonna take it off and let it rest a little bit, and then get back to it after this clay has settled. So here's another 5 kilo. So the good thing about this is that this time I got the bottom a little bit thinner, and I even out the wall better. I pushed in a lot down here and got more of that clay up. So I'm better set up for the rest of the throwing, and that's an important thing. One of my favorite wheel throwers, Danny Meisinger, he's a very good thrower. He always talks about setting up the clay for whatever you're doing. So this is really what I'm doing now. I'm setting up the clay to be ready to my next move. So that's important. I encourage you, by the way, to go and check out his website. And he have a Patreon site where you, for a few dollars a month, can watch his subscribers' videos. And I recommend you do that. So now I'm basically gonna continue the pulling. Oh yeah, one thing that Gitte just taught me that I didn't do so well before is, especially when you start out in the bottom and I push in here to get more of that clay away, I tend to move my hand too fast. So instead he said, stay there until you can feel that the clay is evened out, and only then start moving. And then another thing, if you on the way sort of get out of breath and you almost can't do anymore, stop, move your hands, collar in the top, and then continue. It's much, much better and gives better results than trying to pull through the last strings you have, because then it's gonna get uneven, and yeah, it's just better to stop. So those 2 things alone have helped a lot. So here I was almost losing my breath. So instead of continue, I'm just going to collar in the top. And then I will do the last part of the pulling. Just taking the height. Yeah. And we're at 37 something. So it's already better than the other one. And it's much more even. And I believe I can probably pull out a bit more. Another thing Didi is doing that I've never done before is using a sponge both on the inside and the outside. Sort of evens out the pressure. But it also takes a little bit of getting used to. Because the clay sort of got tired now, the more I pull, the smaller it gets. So to try and stabilize a little more, I will use a heat gun and warm it up a bit. And I'm doing it again. It didn't end up very tall, but at least it's a sort of a useful pot. Try and try and try again. So here we go with another 5 kilo. I'm doing a little bit of a different opening. Instead of making it so wide, I make it a little bit taller, and then I push down to form the button, which is a little more difficult because it's harder to see the button here. But I'll try that. Oh, gotta get it. So I extended the top a little bit and I finished the shape. It will be cut in a little more at the bottom, but I think this like a droplet sort of shape is nice. It's definitely not super tall. It's only about a little less than 30 centimeter. And of course, I would like it to make it bigger with the 5 kilos. So I think I'm gonna throw another one. This one rested a little bit, and it's 38 or something. So hopefully now I can continue working with this clay. So we'll see. Now I have this lazy elbow again. And as you will see in a second, this is how bad it can go. Oops. That one sort of failed. This time I'm gonna do something a little bit different. I'm actually gonna go down in weight a little bit. So I'm gonna start out with about 3.5 kilo, and I'll try and mimic this vase that Gitte did a couple of days ago to try and see if I can somehow match the height with the weight. And this is done with roughly a little more than 3 kilo, and it's about 32 centimeters high. And I love this shape. This is how Gitte makes it. Very unusual way, but making it so narrow here and making like this sort of, I don't know, mushroom shaped starting point actually makes good sense, because the problem we all have is leaving too much clay down there. And now we're already prepared for pulling up this part of the clay. So it actually makes really good sense. So I'm going to try and follow her strategies. Keep in mind that there's a million different ways to do things. And whatever I do, whatever Gitte do, it's not necessarily right or wrong. It's just one way of doing it. But my point in going here and learning from Gitte is to see what I can get out of her techniques. Because, I mean, it's evidently that she makes very nice pottery. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to end up with doing it exactly the same way that she does. Most likely not. But it makes sense to at least study her technique. Because I'm pretty sure that some of what she do, I can learn from.
Arbejde mig ud.
Men så nu laver jeg 2, så må jeg tænke den nederste form. Ja. Yes.
On Gitte's instructions, I'm trying to shape it, make it wider, but maintain the height. It's not going so well this time. It is, however, a technique worth practicing. And I do need more practice. But I've seen how Gitte can maintain the height and shape the pot at the same time. So I'm definitely going to practice this much more.
Altså, du får flyttet mest... Nu skal jeg lige mærke, hvor lige er der henne.
For comparison, take a look at how Gitte is doing this. And please note how much more width she's getting without actually losing any height. That has been a mystery to me so far, but at least now I know the technique. But as I said, I need a lot more practice to be able to perform the same. But it's something that you may consider as well. Now I took over the last part of the work and just trying to do the final shaping. It needs a little more width on the shoulder, but it's getting there. And I got a lot more width and height out of that amount of clay that I ever did before, so I'm definitely moving in the right direction. It didn't end up as tall as I would have wanted to, but the shape is nice and it's nice and thin, but the challenge for me is to shape without losing height. And I got a few tricks on how to do it from Gitte. She's a master in that. So she uses a combination of the rib on the outside and actually push in a lot so she can shape and still maintain height. And I know how to do it. I just don't know how to do it. So, if that makes sense, I'll have to practice more. So, I'm gonna try again. Never give up. So, the same amount of clay, about 3 point something. Trying to aim for the same shape as we did with the other one, just better. So the first thing I'm gonna do is not actually pulling, but just making sure that the walls are smooth and there's no bumps. The clay is well, distributed in a consistent way. So setting up the clay, that's what we talked about before. So wait until you pull, until the clay feels like it's evened out. And then if you get tired or anything, stop. And just reshape it, restabilize it, and then continue. It's okay to stop on the way. It's another thing I knew, but I kind of was reminded this workshop. And again, I'm going to stop, relax, recenter, color it in a little bit. So this time, I actually succeeded in shaping without losing height. And what I realized is it takes an enormous amount of force. So I'm shaping with the rib, but I'm pushing very hard from the inside, like crazy hard, because that way I can lift and shape at the same time. It's very, very difficult, but it's definitely something I'm going to practice more. So this is 30 centimeters, so that's almost the same height as the one Gitte made, the original that I was looking at, which you also have to keep in mind that she's done this many, many more years than me. So this one turned out much better. So it's taller, the shape is nicer, and it's equally thin all the way down. So I will still trim off a little bit on the foot to make it rounder. But what is the difference? What did I do? What did I do right? Well, a couple of things. First of all, when applying the combination of the rib on the outside and applying pressure on the inside to shape without losing height, it takes a lot of pressure, But you also need to be extremely precise because the shape of the rib have a very, very narrow shape, of course. So the pressure is applied very specific. So the inside have to be equally specific. And the mistake I was doing in the beginning, I'm just illustrating here with the rib here, and the pressure was made a little bit on the side of it, and that makes it all wobbly. So you have to be extremely precise when you do this technique in applying the pressure exactly where the rib is. That was one thing. The other thing is that doing that, it is very hard, even for me, and I'm so strong. No, not really, but I couldn't do it all the way with the same focus and concentration. But then stop on the way. Don't just continue. And that was a mistake I made in the beginning. I was pushing up and it was going okay, but then I was getting tired and I was like, oh, let's just finish. But that's when all the mistakes happened. So instead, do it as long as you can with full focus and then stop, release it slowly, stop, recenter the pot a little bit if needed, and then continue. You don't have to do the whole shape pull at one go. So I think that's the most important reasons that this turned out so much better. These are the 4 pots that came out of all my struggles. They're not super tall, I admit that, but the main purpose of this workshop and my work there was to try and get more out of the clay, get more equal walls, and be able to shape without losing height. And I didn't completely accomplish that, but I learned new techniques that I'm going to practice more. And I think these ones actually much lighter and much more evenly sized walls. And all in all, I'm very happy because I managed to get some new techniques that will improve my throwing. And I can apply this to smaller pots as well as larger ones. Now these ones are bone dry and ready to bisque fire. And after that, of course, they need to be glazed. I'm probably going to glaze them in this sort of combination that I think looks really good for this kind of vase. That's it for today. I'm going back to my house in Copenhagen, the other end of the country. But again, it's not a very long drive. It's 2.5 hours. So it's the benefit of living in a very small country. But I had an amazing workshop here. I learned a lot. And from throwing, I learned that I need to be a little more patient. I'm not a very patient person from nature. An important thing is that when you do difficult things, like pulling, shaping, I tend to like get halfway and then I'm almost tired and then I just continue and then it breaks. Relax, do as much as you can, let go, recenter the pot and do it again. Continue. So that's okay. And also got a few more hands-on tips on how to get more clay out of the bottom, which is always like a struggle whenever you do bigger pots, any pot actually. Anyway, I think I had a really good time. I hope you enjoyed the video. Of course, it was more inspirational this time, but I really hope you enjoyed it. And I will have another video next Sunday, 5 p.m. Central European Time. So if you like this one and want to see new ones, please show your love with a subscription, like, share. Also, write a comment if you have anything to say. I hope to see you soon again. Have a great day.